Okay, so we're on to the next part of my sort of slightly more in-depth look at Aspergers from this book. I was just having a quick skim through actually, and I will just quote this because I quite like this. We now recognise that significant advances in science and the arts have been attributable to individuals who have had a different way of thinking and possessed many of the cognitive characteristics associated with Asperger's syndrome. I thank you. Yeah, so anyway, there's a section on cognitive abilities. And it simply states a cognitive ability is the way your brain works, the way it handles problems and things like this, your understanding of it, your level of understanding, how quick you respond to it, and the way your brain deals with it, so the way you work around problems. So what it says is, there's a bit talking about executive function, which I think is important. It says, the psychological term executive function is divided up into organisational and planning abilities, working memory, inhibition and impulse control, self-reflection and self-monitoring, time management and prioritising, understanding complex or abstract concepts and using new strategies, which comes down to things like when you hit problems, your way around them and how you work around them. I have a cognitive delay. That much has become apparent. When I was younger, I was quite impulsive, but not in a sort of bad way. You know, it was, well, I say not in a bad way. I had an experience when I was really small of walking past a lady who was, you got to remember I was very, very small, so quite young. That was last week. And she was leant over a fruit and veg shelf, stacking vegetables, and as a small child you walk past and I smacked her on the bottom and she fell into the shelf. Highly amusing, and I will remember that for the entirety of my life, and many people bring it up occasionally to embarrass me with it, but you remember these things, so yeah, so I remember that quite vividly. But that's it, that's an impulse control. It was a case of, you know, yeah, that you know, I've got a bit more impulse control these days, let's put it that way, so I don't smack people on the bottom anymore. No, so yeah, the cognitive function. The problem with it is you hit problems. I used to find this at school. So you would hit a problem, and it would you would be expected to find a way to solve the problem. Especially so in maths. I'm not very good with numbers at all, and you were taught ways to deal with the problems you were given. But sometimes you'd be given a problem and the way you had been taught didn't really seem to apply to it. Especially in my case, it was a case of what we had been taught. You were expected to kind of provide a little bit extra to use what you'd learned to solve this issue, and I was never able to look at these two as a complete entity and say, if I do this way, this will come out as a result. It was a case of, well, I've got this and I've got this, and I don't see how they go together. Which is a little bit unusual because Aspies tend to be sort of problem solvers as they get older, so you know, a lot of them go into like mechanical work and all this kind of thing, but when you're not specifically clear what you're doing, that can be an issue. There's this thing as well about working with fear of failure. If you're in a classroom full of people, and even as an adult, I went to a group recently where we were doing, it was a customer care course, and we had to think of like solutions and reasons for various things, why we did them in the workplace and what bigger companies would use as comparison to smaller companies. And thinking on a very small scale approach, I was providing some of the answers that I knew they were looking for, and then people were coming up with things I'd never even considered. And when you sit there and you think about it afterwards, you think, oh well, yeah, that's pretty obvious. But at the time you sit there and you think, well, that's a bit weird, I wonder why they came out with that. And as only afterwards you're sort of on the bus home and you're sort of reflecting, because that's another thing, you sit there and you reflect endlessly. What did I do today that was right? Did I do okay? Did I piss anybody off? Did I stressed out here? Was there a reason for that? So yeah, so you end up, you self-reflect about a lot of things, but you sit there and you think, well, why didn't I think of this? Why didn't I think of the solution to that? Because we're supposed to be, you know, have this thing about thinking outside the box. I mean, come on, we've all seen Rain Man. We're supposed to be good at maths and count bubbles. But no, you sit there and you wonder why you didn't come up with these things, but that's just the way it is. You can get a delay that kicks in, it's cognitive delay especially, you'll hit a snag, you can't figure a solution out to it as obvious afterwards, but we all have moments like that. It's just about that ours is more immediately obvious. And I'm going to go straight from there to movement and coordination. Clumsiness and general sort of attributes to that. I can be very, very clumsy. I mean, a lot of people put it down to being tired, and yeah, we can all get tired and clumsy. Like, certainly I know when I'm tired and clumsy, and I know the difference between that and when I'm not feeling quite with it. The way I like to describe it is like this. You are not this. You know, well, obviously you are not this, I'm this, you're you, but you're not, the sort of the shell you're in is not all you. You've got thoughts and feelings that go on inside your head and things you like doing that people can't see. So, and you can wear different clothes that don't always reflect the sort of person you are. So you are not you. What you see is the shell that you choose to present to the outside world. So you sort of inhabit yourself. You're sort of inside it all. If you were religious, you would say it was your soul, your spirit, or whatever. I'm not, so you know my belief is my belief. So you sort of inhabit that. Now, on a good day, when you're refreshed, revitalised, and okay, you're perfectly in control of everything. You're aware of where you are, your emotions, senses, all this kind of thing. So that's on a good day. On a bad day, you might drop things or trip on things, or you just feel generally sleepy and not quite with it. Now imagine this bad day as when you've been at your most tired and you zone out a lot. I think that recently was told they were brownouts, where you temporarily kind of drift off. Now imagine being in that state for several hours, being aware you're in that state and not able to really do anything about it, not being able to kind of snap back to a more aware condition. That is how I spend a good 20-30% of my life. It's not. It's something you sit there and wonder whether it could potentially be unsafe. I have been in a couple of occasions when I've been near a road, and I've been in that condition, in that sort of state, and a car has gone past and it's been a little bit too loud or a bit noisy, or I've seen somebody step into the road and a car's been coming, and I kind of snap out of it just like that. Which is good, obviously. I don't think it would be a problem. But yeah, then you do kind of drift back into it again, so you don't kind of stay out of it permanently. And this affects a lot of my sort of life. It's not a consistent enough thing to be a problem. So most of the time I'm okay, but then on occasion, if I'm extremely stressed, not necessarily tired, there is a difference between being stressed and tired. The two can relate, and they can be affected by each other, but they're not necessarily the same. So when I'm extremely stressed or overloaded, I tend to go into these little zone outs, and I can still function and talk to people and this kind of thing. I just don't feel quite with it. And the way I always like to describe it is, if you imagine that your sort of inner part and your outer part are usually together when you're consistent and you're okay, but when you're zoney and spaced, that inner part feels more floaty, like it's not quite a part of the outer part. And you feel like you're sort of just attached by like chewing gum or something. You're sort of floating sort of outside of it, and that can be very strange. So you're in control of everything, you're just not 100%. So now that that's completely weirded everybody out, that directly leads to the clumsiness. Clumsiness comes as a direct result of you reach out for your favourite cup on a particular day, and on a good day you can reach out and pick it up and it's no problem, which in some cases you could probably pick it up without even looking at it. On a bad day, you reach out and for some reason you go to pick it up further forward than you think it is, and you send it flying off the table and smashes on the floor or whatever. You're sitting with your hands in your lap at a tabletop. You go to lift your hand up to pick something up off the table. You smash your knuckles into the table because you've misjudged where the table is, where your hand is, where your arm is, etc., etc. So that kind of deals with that. That's the motor clumsiness. Some people learn to get around it, some people don't. I've done a lot of martial arts in my life and a lot of physical training, and I work out in an attempt to gain some kind of finer muscle control over it, so I've got more degree of control over it. And I can honestly say it doesn't work. You don't develop a better muscle control over it. What you develop is the ability to knock heavier objects over when you're clumsy. So in the sort of swings and roundabouts, really, there's not really a lot of getting around it. You just know that generally, you know when you're in that sort of state because you can feel it. It's not something that's you just suddenly drop something and think, oh, this will be a clumsy day. You wake up and you think, I don't know, it just doesn't. Something doesn't quite feel right. Like when you've got new shoes on, you've left a sticker in. It doesn't quite feel right until you've sorted it out. So that nicely trails off that section. So in a nutshell, I'm a menace to be around. Okay, I'm probably not there, but head.